wine is from grapes and grapes are fruit. So think about unripe fruit versus ripe fruit versus overripe fruit. And think about the sweetness, the bitterness, and the sourness. Okay. Unripe fruit is sour and bitter, but not sweet, right? Ripe fruit is a little sour, maybe a little bitter, but sweet. And overripe fruit is very sweet with no sour. It's because, sorry, you're going to get science, but I promise it's going to be
I was going to say, it's back to balance, what you were just mentioning.
Right here, see these thick glasses? I earned these. You're going to get some science. So when any fruit is ripening, right, the plant is photosynthesizing. It's taking ultraviolet light through chlorophyll, converting that into sugars. Right? That's photosynthesis in a nutshell. As fruit gets ripe, there are more sugars in the fruit. And why that's important for us is it has nothing to do with the sweetness of the wine. But if you remember from like 6th grade chemistry, yeast eats sugar, it gives off two things, alcohol and carbon dioxide. Get rid of the CO2, keep the alcohol, you turn juice into wine, right? So we need the sugars. We actually refer to it, like winemakers refer to sugar concentration as potential alcohol. But as the sugars ripen, the acidities drop. They're inversely proportional because acid is a function of a lack of ripeness. So the more ripe the fruit gets, the more sugar, the less acid. And if we get to a point where there's too much sugar and not enough acid, you will have a finished wine that is very fruit forward, very high alcohol because sugar is the catalyst, it's the food for the yeast, but not enough acidity to give it the balance. And the acidity that's added, despite the fact that almost all white wines taste of citrus fruit in some way, there's really virtually no citric acid in wine. There's like less than half a milligram. The two common acids in wine are malic acid, which is what gives green apples, crab apples, the pith of citrus fruit, their bitterness. And then there is tartaric acid, which you know more as cream of tartar, baking product, the ingredient in tartar sauce, right? So when we talk about adding acidity, what we're actually doing is at some stage of pre or during fermentation, tartaric acid crystals, like powdered tartaric acid, are added into the fermenting wine. Can also happen after the fact. And that just sets the acid balance of the wine to counteract the sugar ripeness, the fruit flavors, and the alcohol.
Can we go backwards? How are the acids produced? Or are they always necessarily in a relationship with the fermentable sugars?
Yes. That's just how plants work. That's how fruits work, right? As photosynthesis continues, sugars increase, acids decrease. It's just that's the science of how nature ripens fruit.
With the high altitudes, that somehow produces higher acidity?
Correct. The reason is it's cooler. Therefore, the ripening period is lengthened. Because, think about it. When you're up high in the mountains, right, you need more layers. It gets much colder at night. So that there's the differential in temperatures between day and night. We call it the diurnal shift. And as you're in higher elevation, that diurnal shift is more dramatic. It can change 20, 30 degrees, 40 degrees Fahrenheit, 10, 15, 20 degrees Celsius in a day. And in order for the plant to ripen its fruit, it needs sun, it needs solar radiation, but it also needs heat or heat units. So if you think about it, very cold nights means it takes a while for the plant to warm up. And then just as it gets warm, it starts to get cold again. So it prolongs the growing season, the ripening period of that plant.
Is that the same in the desert, in the south?
For the Negev, yeah, to a certain degree, yes.
Okay.
So the other thing that prolonged ripening period does, though, is it allows the flavor compounds, we call those phenolics or phenolic compounds, to also develop. It takes longer to develop, therefore they develop more intensely than something that ripens so quickly. So I don't have a good analogy for this, but just think about this. We have to pick grapes at a certain potential alcohol because otherwise the wine will be too alcoholic. It'll ferment to 16, 17 degrees. It will be too hot. It will burn your throat. It'll feel unbalanced. That's not pleasant. But if it's so hot that we get to that ripeness so quickly, we don't allow enough time for the flavors to develop. So sorry, more science. So the term we use is lignification. That's where stems go from green to brown. So like the seeds of the grape go from green to brown, the stems of the grape go from green to brown. So the cooler climate or the cooler nights allow for a longer ripening period. So not just a more balanced wine, but more intensity of flavors in the wine as well, beyond just fruit concentration.
I hope you enjoyed this clip. And don't forget, this entire episode is available for free on YouTube, podcast players, and you can check out everything at jewishdrinking.com. Thank you so much for watching.